Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Nau mai, haere mai, ki te kura o tawa tawa. I te Premier Hipkins, nau mai, haere mai. I te Minita Tineti, nau mai, haere mai. Nau mai, haere mai anō hoki ki te Roy Sai, me ngā kaimahi o te tāhuhu o te mātauranga. I ngā tangata o Parimeti, me ngā tangata o Perahi, tēnā koutou I tēnei ata. Welcome to all of our guests this morning, and in particular to Prime Minister Chris Hipkins and Minister of Education Jan Tinetti, and to Roy Sai, Director of Education for the Wellington region, and Catherine York from the property team. Just a quick note for emergencies: if the fire alarm goes off, we will exit via the nearest door, either that one or this one, and we'll all meet up on the sports court over in the corner of our grounds. Tēnā koutou tamariki o te kura o tawa tawa. Tēnei ata tātou hui ki whakarongo ki Minita Premier Hipkins, ka kōrero whai tikanga ia mā tātou. Our assembly today is especially to listen to the Prime Minister speak. He has some important words for us. Would you like to come and speak now?
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. Hello everybody, it's good to be here. Now can anybody remember when I was last here? Yeah? About this time last year, I think it might have been a little bit later in the year, but last year. And can you remember why I was here? Yeah?
When the new school opened.
When the new school opened, that's right. So I was here to open the new school last year. Can you remember what the school was like before the new school was opened? Put your hand up if you can remember what the old buildings were like. Can you explain what the old buildings were like? Who wants to share with me? Yeah?
Old and crusty.
Old and crusty. Yeah? Anyone else want to explain what the old buildings were like? Yeah?
The buildings were sometimes low.
Yeah? And yeah. Who else wants to give me an explanation? Yeah, just here?
There was this corridor where you could always hang your bag up.
Yeah.
It is seriously behind this room.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. So they were not very nice. Did anyone think they were nice, the old buildings? Really? You liked them? You're very polite. Okay. Who likes your new buildings better? Yeah, that's much better. Right. What's your favourite thing about your new buildings? You're very polite. Yep.
It's a really big library.
There's a really big library. Yep.
There's 2 levels.
There's 2 levels.
There's a basketball court.
There's a basketball court. What else? Over the back there? Yep. Yeah, the obstacle course. Yeah. And what about over here? Yep. The playground, the new playground. Yeah. We'll take a couple more over here. Lots of space for playing. And maybe you guys over here?
The microwaves.
The microwaves. Sounds good. All right, so you can pop your hands down now. So the reason that we're here today is because we were here to open your new building, and we actually have a whole lot more work that we've got to do to make sure other schools up and down the country have got the sorts of buildings that we need them to have. So when we became the government and when I became the Minister of Education, that was 5.5 years ago now, we had to create space for 100,000 more children in our schools. So we were short of, by the end of this decade, so by 2030, we were projected to be 100,000 spaces short. And that means thousands of extra classrooms that we needed. So far, we found the money to build 2,700 new classrooms. And does anyone know what the government is doing this week? What's the big thing the government's doing this week? Does anybody know? Yeah? That's quite a precise number that you've got there, and you're very close. But does anyone know what happens? What does the government do once a year, and we're doing it this year? Anyone want to guess? Yeah? I'll tell you what the government does. Once a year, we release the government's budget. And it says how much we're going to spend on things. And this week, on Thursday, we're releasing the government's budget. And we're putting more money into building more new classrooms so that more kids around the country can have the sorts of classrooms like the ones that you guys have got. So nicer classrooms. So that's what we're announcing today. And we thought, where should we go to announce it? We thought we should come to a school that's already got a nice new classroom so that the rest of the kids around the country can see what they might be getting from the money that we're investing in building new classrooms for them. So we're going to be building, because of the money that we're putting in addition to the money that we've already got, 3,000 more classrooms around the country. So that's a lot of new classrooms. This year's budget funds 300 of those new classrooms, and then that's on top of the money that we've already been putting into building new classrooms. So that's why we're here today, because we wanted to see how you're enjoying your new buildings. So, who likes them? Yeah, everyone's got their hands up, including some of the teachers. That's pretty cool. All right. And what's your favourite thing about school? Yeah? The teachers. Very good. Did they tell you to say that? No, they didn't. That's good. That's a very good answer. What's your favourite thing about school? Yeah, it's you. Maths. That's very good. You like numbers? Yeah, that's awesome. And what's your favourite thing about school? Literacy. Reading and writing. Do you like reading or writing more? You like reading more? Some cool books? Yeah, excellent. We'll have a couple more. What's your favourite thing about school? Yeah.
Cross country.
Cross country. You like to run?
Yeah.
Awesome. And let's see, right over there in the... Yeah, yep. You like the basketball court? That's your favourite thing about school? Yeah? And over here? Maths. Very good. All right, you can pop your hands down now. So that's what I'm here to announce. Now, after you guys have gone, we're going to talk to the media down the back there, and we're going to give them a bit more detail about what it is that we're announcing. But before we do that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, the Minister of Education, Jan Tinetti. She's going to have a few words with you as well. But before we do that, Last year when I was here, I was the Minister of Education. Does anyone know what my job is now? Yeah? Prime Minister, that's right. So I got a bit of a promotion. It's pretty cool, eh? So I'm going to hand over to the new Minister of Education, who's going to say a few words to you as well.
Kia ora, Prime Minister. Kia ora koutou, tamariki mā. Gosh, thank you for that wonderful, wonderful welcome to your school. I have to say, when I came in here and saw your beautiful new buildings, I thought, wow, how lucky are you? That is just fantastic. Do you know last week on Friday I got to open a new flash building like this at a school up in Auckland, Beachland School. And I said to those children there, they were beautiful just like you are, and I said to them, it's so fantastic that you're in such wonderful buildings, but we want to see every young person in this country learning in warm, dry, beautiful buildings just like this. And that's what we're here announcing today is a further step to ensuring that more young children, just like you, are able to learn in such fantastic conditions, just like this one here. You are so lucky, aren't you? It's fantastic. It's just so fantastic to be here. So, this morning we're making this announcement. I've got a whole lot of figures that I could read out to you, but we're not going to read them out just yet because you'll just think, why is she talking like that? We're going to leave that to the media, to talk to the media afterwards once you've gone about that. But what I want to say is that when I came in here this morning and heard that fantastic waiata, it took me back to when I used to work in schools. So I used to be a principal and a teacher, and Mr. Sy used to be a principal as well. And the two of us were singing along to your waiata because it was one that we knew. I'm just wondering whether there might be another waiata that we can sing before the young people go, because that has made my day.
We've got something we prepared earlier.
Oh, something you prepared earlier. That would be fantastic. Thank you for your beautiful welcome here today. I really hope I get the opportunity to have a bit more of a look around your school as well.
I believe that the Prime Minister and the Minister have some words that they want to say to the journalists. So what we're going to do is we're going to head back to class. It's almost morning tea time, break time, so And you're going to go with your teachers, listen to them, they will take you out sort of line by line in an orderly fashion. Thanks guys.
All good, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Everyone can hear. Test, test. News hub, get in there. Test, test. All good, okay.
Test, test, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, classes, education, Ridgeway School, test, 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 1, 2, 3, test, 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 testing, testing, we're here to announce classrooms, classrooms, testing, all good? All good?
Right, kia ora everybody. Great to be here to make a pre-budget announcement regarding school buildings. Just to be clear, I'll answer other questions at post-cab this afternoon, but just to recap on some of the key details around today's announcement. When we became the government 5.5 years ago, I asked the Ministry of Education to put together projections of how much extra space we were going to need in our schools to cope with population growth. Back at that time, we had schools teaching kids in gymnasiums and libraries and so on because schools were becoming overcrowded. The country simply hadn't built enough new classrooms to cope with population growth. At that time, the Ministry of Education projected that we would need space for around 100,000 extra children by the year 2030, so by the end of this decade. We've been focused as a government on making sure we are delivering that. Up until now, we had funded space for 2,700 new classrooms, so that was money that's already there and work is underway. That's around 60,000 of that 100,000 has already been funded. Today we're adding an extra 300 classrooms into that, so that's over 6,000 extra spaces, extra student spaces that we're funding in this year's budget. In terms of the delivery of that program of work, more than half of the spaces that have now been collectively funded, so 3,000, more than half of those have already been delivered. By the end of next year, we're anticipating that we will have halved that gap, so 100,000 spaces required by the end of the decade, by the end of next year. If we continue with the current rate of building that we're doing, if we continue the momentum that we have now, we should have halved that gap. That means that we should comfortably be able to hit that 100,000 target by the end of the decade. That's all work that's been done under this government. So the work that we've been doing around school building is something that I'm really proud of. It is an example of where we've invested over the time we've been in government to really bring our schools up to scratch. Of course, building new classrooms is only part of the equation. There's also work around building new schools, which Minister Tinetti will set out some more news about as well, and a significant program to redevelop our existing schools. So we've seen through the Christchurch schools rebuild to make sure that we've delivered on the commitments that were made to the people of Canterbury following the Canterbury earthquakes and make sure that they're getting the school buildings that we know that they deserve. And for some of our most rundown schools, we've been putting a significant focus on big redevelopment projects. So that includes schools like this one, where we've been able to completely upgrade their buildings to both cope with population growth, but also to cope with the fact that some of the buildings that they were previously dealing with were pretty old and in need of significant replacement work. So I'll now hand over to Minister Tinetti, who's got a few details on new school building, and then we'll open up for questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and good morning, everyone. So over our time in government, we've had 16 new schools that we've been able to open, and this morning we are announcing that we are adding to that with $100 million in this year's budget for another up to 4 new schools that we will be building over this time, looking in those role growth areas and where the need is for the new schools. So pretty exciting announcement that we're able to add to the work that we've already done this morning.
Right. And now we're happy to open up for questions.
When will the 3,000 classrooms be built by?
It depends. So they're built over a period of time. So as I've indicated, we're at the moment we're sort of finishing around 4,000 student places per quarter, and so the funding that we're putting in today will help us to maintain that momentum. That means that, as I said, by the end of next year, if we continue with that progress that we've been making, we will have halved that gap, that 100,000 gap, and that means that that then leaves us with another 6 years to finish the remaining school buildings that we know will be required.
Right, so of the funding for the 2,700 classrooms that has previously already been committed, do you have a number of how many classrooms have actually been built as a result of that?
Just over 1,500 have been finished. There's about 650 currently in construction, so builders working on site, and then the remainder of them will be in the planning stages. One of the challenging bits about new classrooms is that sometimes they're often associated with other work. So if you look at this school, for example, it was a mix of redevelopment and new classrooms, and those more complex projects take a bit longer.
Can you tell me about the 100 million that's going to short-term issues? How bad is the problem here and what will that go towards?
So the short-term building issues are things, basically it's relocatable classrooms. So it's things like where a school's population grows faster than anticipated, we can put extra classrooms on site while we think about how to best to manage that in the longer term. So in some cases it'll be relocatable classrooms are used as a short-term solution, whilst we then think about a redesign and a rebuild of the school so that we're maximising the use of their spaces.
That's a decent amount going towards that. Is that how bad is the issue?
We know that in some areas population has grown quite fast. So if we think about some parts of Auckland, but Tauranga, some parts of Canterbury, particularly where there's been significant population shifts, we do occasionally have to make use of relocatable classrooms to make sure that we've got the classrooms there when they're needed for the growth of the population.
Is it sure that some classrooms at the moment are using spaces like Whanganui without air conditioning because they don't have enough space and this won't probably get to them straight away?
Air conditioning is an interesting challenge. We don't, as of routine, have air conditioning in a lot of schools up and down the country. But what we do want to get away from is schools using gymnasiums, using their marae spaces, using non-teaching spaces, libraries, for classroom space because they've simply run out of space. Now, the progress that we've made, over 1,500 extra classrooms already built in the time that we've been in government, and a significant amount of work done on upgrading existing spaces within schools, that's really helping to get on top of that problem. So we're seeing a lot less of it now. I can't hand on heart say that there won't be, the odd school where that's happening because their population's growing faster than was anticipated. That's one of the reasons why we're putting in funding for those short-term classrooms, so that where we need to, we can put extra classrooms on site.
What's the story with the new schools? When and where?
So we have 2 new schools at the moment that are in development. One's in Papamoa and one in Auckland, in the Auckland region. But again, that's the part of the national growth plan that we've got, and we will be determining that on the role growth in those areas and what is needed when the roles hit a certain level in those particular schools. Forward planning is always going on. I know in the region that I live in that there are schools that have been planned down the track at different times because of the role growth in those particular areas, but it is part of the national growth plan.
Yeah, but so you've got 4, so you're saying up to 4.
Up to 4.
So those 2 included in that up to 4.
Those 2 have already been planned. There's just ones that I'm letting you know this morning that have been part of the plan, but there are up to 4 new schools that we're announcing this morning. We will be determining that with the National Growth Plan, and the National Growth Plan sets it out. The Prime Minister mentioned areas like Tauranga, like Auckland, like Queenstown. Those are the areas that are the key areas where we're seeing growth that's outstripping what we've currently got.
And just on that language, why do you use the language up to 4 schools?
Well, we have to be a little bit careful there because we do know that there's constructions costs in that as well. We do know that 4 is a target that we're working towards, but we have to make certain that we're within the budgets that we've set down. 4 is what we are targeting.
Just to be clear, is this reallocated funding or new budget?
This is new budget funding. And just also, one of the reasons that we don't announce exactly where we're going to build new schools until we're ready to get underway with them, so we've got to get the funding first, is because there's often some commercial negotiation around securing land. So we typically announce a new school build once we've secured the land, because obviously that's a commercial negotiation, and generally you inflate the price if you announce where you're going to build it before you've actually got a signed contract.
I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah.
I guess what will these new classrooms do to sort of the falling literacy rates that we're seeing around the country? How are you addressing them, and are you doing enough to address those rates?
Ultimately, teaching and learning will be better if the space that teachers and students and young people are in are of higher quality. When they've got buckets on the floor because the roof is leaking, that's a huge distraction from teaching and learning, which is what we really want them focused on. Now, it's not the ultimate solution to literacy and numeracy. The quality of teaching and the quality of learning is going to be the thing that's going to turn around literacy and numeracy, and the Minister can speak at great length around the work that we're doing in that area. But I'm not going to say that we should just ignore the state of our school buildings while we focus on literacy and numeracy. We've got to do both.
On the back buildings, because some people don't like these modern learning environments, they say they're too hard for some kids. Are you building the right types of buildings to get those learning gains?
Schools are involved in the design of buildings and spaces that they get. In some cases, schools like to stick with a more conventional design for their school buildings, and others, they want to open them up. And in many cases, they have an ability to do both. So they've got an ability to have a more traditional single-cell environment that opens out into a more open space. Schools are very involved in that, and they get the chance to help to design spaces and create spaces that meet the style of teaching and learning that they do.
So this money's been put into this issue, but how are we going to know that this is an urgent priority for you to actually make sure that money that's sitting aside is going to be put into contracts quickly?
Well, I think if you look at our track record of delivery, as I've said, in the time that we've been in government, every budget we've put aside extra funding for school buildings. And if you look at the fact that we've delivered more than half of the new school classrooms that we've funded, that is a sign that we are getting momentum in this area. School buildings, school classrooms, particularly if you take, say, a school like this one, where it's a multi-level building on a complex site because of the hillside and all of those sorts of things, they don't just happen overnight. You've got to make sure you get the design right, and that all of the engineering work is done so that the school gets a really good learning environment out the other side of it. But I think our track record shows that we do get the money out the door, and we do actually get these building projects underway.
Speaking of your track record, brother, speaking of your track record of pre-budget announcements in education, your previous pre-budget announcements about attendance officers was meant to deliver 32, so far 1.
Oh no, it's above that now.
I'll let the Minister answer that question.
So we've got contracts out, 19 contracts, which is about, I don't want to say the FTEs around that, but we've actually got 3 as of last week on Friday, and it's going up on a daily basis.
So you're celebrating 3?
I'm celebrating that it's going up on a daily basis.
Has that number of classrooms built, 1,500 since 2017, has that met annual targets?
Yeah, we're on track. So basically we mapped out there was no National Education Growth Plan when we became the government, and as Minister of Education, I got the Ministry of Education to do one. And that highlights the areas of where we forecast there to be population growth, or where we forecast where we were already experiencing population pressure. We've obviously focused on the areas where there's been the most existing pressure first, and then look to areas where we know there's going to be population growth. But the advantage of having a National Education Growth Plan is that you can get a bit ahead of the curve. So we've been able to think about that in terms of land procurement, for example. So buying land before it gets to the point where a school is desperately needed or classrooms are desperately needed. So the National Education Growth Plan set out, a bit of a trajectory. We're certainly on track to meet that.
What's your assessment on current supply chain issues and issues in the construction sector, and how they might impact building classrooms at the moment going forward in the next couple of years?
One of the key things that we did, and I'm just trying to remember back, it would have been about 3 budgets ago, was we moved from a 1-year budget cycle for school capital spend to a 4-year budget cycle for school capital. And one of the reasons that we did that was the feedback we were getting from the construction sector is if we gave them a longer term pipeline of work, so they knew what was coming up over the next 4 years, then the market could gear up to be able to deliver that. Whereas when they were just getting 1 year at a time, they'd typically just plan one project at a time. Now they're planning for, up to 4 years ahead, and the advantage of that is that some of those issues that we were experiencing early on with the market and just not having the capacity to deliver, we've been able to overcome that by giving them greater certainty about what's ahead.
You don't think the building of these classrooms, these new builds will be impacted by those stresses in that sector?
No, I think we've seen over the last few years that we've been able to continue to deliver, despite the fact that the building and construction sector's clearly got a bit of heat in it still.
Would you say the spots for 100,000 students that we need, does that factor in the 30,000 school roll number that the school roll number is estimated to fall by 30,000 by 2032?
The challenge is that that's an uneven number. So in some areas the population will continue to grow while in other areas it will decline. So of course you have to plan for building new classrooms in the area where the population is growing, even if you're removing classrooms. So it was a net 100,000 target. We have to add in space for 100,000 more students, even if we know that in some areas it's going to be declining. Does that make sense? You with me? Yeah, good.
Were you saying it's by 2030?
Yeah, that was the forecast. So the forecast was we would have 100,000 extra students that we needed to accommodate. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a total of 100,000 extra students, because in some cases it can mean that there might be fewer over here and more over here.
So is that target of 100,000 that hasn't changed despite the forecast for primary schools in particular for falling roles? You still think
the National Education Growth Plan is updated regularly, and that's it provides a bit more granular information about particular locations. So obviously the forecasts move up and down in particular locations depending on what they're seeing in terms of population growth.
Do you think that could change, or you'd be reluctant, given that those numbers can fluctuate, you could just stick with the 100k and then reevaluate? It
may come down a little bit over the next 6 years, depending on what the overall population patterns do.
On the confident that we can hit that general target.
Yes.
On the back of Amelia's earlier question, do you feel like students and their learning and their achievement has sort of suffered as a result of poor learning environments, classrooms, and do you hope that achievement will go up as a result?
It's certainly been a real distraction for the teaching community. We know that where schools really have those old shabby buildings, teachers are focused on just getting kids through the day. In some cases, when it rains heavily, they have to put buckets under the leaks in the roof and those sorts of things. Of course that's going to distract from teaching and learning.
And so do you hope that achievement, kind of student achievement, will increase and you'll see that in numbers?
Well, we've got a real focus on student achievement. Of course, we've got to recognise that student achievement is a long game as well. So if you think about some of the big international measures around student achievement, so PISA, for example, that's measuring out the literacy and numeracy of 15-year-olds. Those kids, by the time they get to that point, have already been in the school system for 10 years. So we have to recognise that some of the things that we're doing now we will see the benefits of in the future.
Do you specifically look at whether achievement does go up in schools or areas where you've invested in some more classrooms and put more resources in it? Does it get down to that level, or do you not do that?
That would be quite a difficult thing to measure. Yeah. All right.
So just a question about NCA level 1. Principals for schools are all kind of saying NCA level 1's not rigorous enough, we're not going to do it, we're going to do something else instead. What's your reaction to that?
Well, schools have been able to choose whether they do NCEA level 1 for quite some time, and they have to make the decision of what's based on their school needs. As far as the latest changes that have been made to NCEA level 1, they've been made with experts, with the sector. The changes have been well needed for the bigger achievement standards that have been developed under this level 1. Schools will still make the decision of what's best for them and what's best for their students. I've since had other principals that have come to me who have said, we desperately need level 1 and love what's happening with level 1. It's needed for our students to be able to form their way into an assessment pathway.
Has it been dumbed down?
Absolutely not. If anything, people tell me that this is a better way for our teachers to be teaching to those assessment standards, and it's way more rigorous than what they've seen in the past. And I have had that since Friday. I've had that from about 3 or 4 different secondary school principals.
Is it a qualification that's becoming perhaps irrelevant for the more academically able?
I think level 1 is a qualification that is, different schools have questioned whether it's relevant for their pupils for quite some time, because it doesn't lead to a lot of other pathways. Some schools are making the decision that they will take 2 years to do the level 2 rather than do level 1. Some people are making a decision that they will make a different pathway. I had a conversation with Julia Davidson on Thursday at Wellington Girls, who said her decision wasn't about the rigour of it, it was just that they found a different pathway that was suitable for their young girls.
Do you know how much it costs to teach NCA level 1?
I haven't got that figure in front of me. Thank you.
Thank you.